King of the Hill has countless fun and memorable characters, but I don't think any are quite as polarizing as Peggy Hill. This is honestly pretty understandable given some of her more outrageous escapades, but despite some of her stubborn, self-centered tendencies, I think Peggy Hill is an incredibly nuanced and interesting character. So what do you say? You guys want to hear me talk about Peggy Hill?
Oh yeah!
I'm going to start by breaking down the character traits that I think Peggy conveys, and there are a lot. She's very capable, she's loving and passionate, especially towards her family and loved ones. She's a little repressed and naive. I mean, she was the last to figure out that Nancy was cheating on Dale with John Redcorn. She's also ridiculously stubborn and insecure about a lot of aspects of herself. But above all, despite her insecurities, she's incredibly confident, bordering on narcissistic. As Hank said,
Peggy, you've got a pretty high opinion of yourself.
She thinks she's fluent in Spanish, which she absolutely is not.
Benito, pásame sus testes.
This was how she felt about the very first song she ever wrote.
You know, I had a feeling it was very, very good.
She believes she's a genius after taking an online IQ test, but she also does have some real reasons to be confident about certain aspects of herself. She's a multiple-year winner of the Substitute Teacher of the Year award, she's an actual Boggle State champion, and over the course of the series, she's held a wide variety of jobs that she's shown to be pretty darn good at. But despite her capability, that borderline narcissism is definitely what makes people love to hate Peggy Hill, especially given the ridiculous hijinks that her overconfidence has gotten her into. I mean, let's just briefly break down some of the most ridiculous incidents. She unknowingly became a drug mule for a prisoner. She accidentally became a foot fetish model. She mistakenly kidnapped a Mexican child from Mexico on a class field trip. She punched Randy Travis and accused him of stealing her song. And I mean, honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg for Peggy Hill. She's gotten into some truly outrageous situations, and they almost always stem from her stubbornness and inability to back down from any sort of challenge or questioning of her capabilities. While it's easy to look at Peggy Hill from the outside in and point out her obvious flaws, from a character perspective, there's actually a really well-rounded explanation for this perpetual cycle that we see Peggy go through. So let me break it down for you because I think I've got Peggy Hill figured out.
I will not be a failure or look like one.
First, Peggy Hill is a capable person, and she always has been. Throughout the series, despite her shortcomings, she has repeatedly shown that she is smart, crafty, and capable in a great variety of situations. Many of the insane scenarios she's gotten caught up in, she's found her own way out of. 2, for Peggy Hill's entire life, her capabilities have been questioned and undermined. In the season 2 episode Bobby Slam, we get a handful of flashbacks to Peggy's childhood. We see that while growing up, she repeatedly showed that she was very talented in ways that were traditionally not considered very, quote, ladylike. And because of these gender norms, she was repeatedly shut down from being able to participate in or fully explore those aspects of herself. We later learned that Peggy's mother seemed to treat her similarly growing up. There's a lot of resentment there. 3, because of the way Peggy was shut down throughout her entire life, she became deeply insecure about many aspects of herself. She was barred from doing the things that she excels at and forced to try and do the quote ladylike things that were pushed onto her as a kid, which she wasn't particularly good at. 4, as Peggy got older, she recognized that she really was capable in a lot of different ways that she was repeatedly barred from growing up. This seemingly helped push that stubborn nature to the forefront. Peggy has shown over and over again that she hates being told no. She hates being told what she can or can't do. And this likely is because she was told no so much growing up, even though she was capable. 5, this combination of capability, insecurity, and stubbornness became a dangerous combination for Peggy because though she is capable, she's not capable at everything. There is a lot she is simply not great at. But because people told her no so much growing up, and she later proved these were things she was actually good at, this instilled an overconfidence in her. Basically, when you tell Peggy Hill she can't do something, she's like,
it became personal with me.
6, that insecurity and stubbornness created an inability to admit when she has been beaten or is wrong. Oftentimes, when Peggy is completely overwhelmed by a situation that she was not prepared for, rather than admitting failure, she doubles down and makes things worse. That's pretty much the Peggy Hill pattern with some occasional variation and twists throughout the series. Let's take a look at a few examples to show how this pattern plays out. In season 3's Peggy's Pageant Fever, Peggy decides to enter a beauty pageant, which is obviously very representative of those aforementioned ladylike like things that Peggy has never been particularly good at. So this once again appeals to her insecurities, and she decides to enter the pageant to prove herself. And she really believes she's gonna win.
With my smarts and looks and muchos talentos, well, I think I have a huge edge over these bimbos, huh, Hank?
When she's challenged by Hank and Nancy, she once again doubles down. She fires Luann as her stylist and hires a professional to give her an over-the-top makeover, which ultimately dooms her. In the end, Peggy didn't win the pageant or even participate, but this is a pretty solid showcase of that Peggy Hill pattern. In the episode Death in Texas, Peggy receives a letter from a prison inmate who claims that Peggy was a teacher who inspired him. So right off the bat, this person is appealing to Peggy's insecurities. She goes to see him because she wants to believe that she impacts her students in profound ways, even if that student is on death row for murder. Through their time together, Peggy is manipulated by the inmate and begins to spend a lot of time with him, at which point Hank forbids Peggy from going back to the prison. This is where that Peggy Hill stubbornness kicks in.
Nobody forbids Peggy Hill.
Forbidding Peggy Hill is basically the one way you can ensure she'll actually do something. When she doubles down, she's tricked into smuggling cocaine into the prison inside a Boggle hourglass. And then, astoundingly, she continues to do it over and over, despite how obvious it is. Peggy's insecurities led her to the prison, and her stubbornness kept her there, getting her into deeper and deeper trouble. But Peggy isn't always this foolish. She does find her own way out of the situation. When she realizes that the inmate used all of the cocaine and there was no evidence against her, she denies any of it happened. And this really is the pattern we see over and over in the show. Peggy gets a job at the local newspaper writing for the household tips column, something she is not very good at. When she runs out of tips that she steals from Min, her overconfidence leads her to make up her own, telling people to mix bleach and ammonia for household cleaning. She almost mustard gassed the entire town. In season 4, she accidentally becomes a foot fetish model, which personally I believe there's nothing wrong with, but she didn't realize what she was actually getting into. When Hank shows her the true nature of the foot modeling, she actually doubles down and continues to model. She's basically convinced that her incredibly large feet are desirable for certain types of people, which is absolutely true, and this speaks to Peggy's insecurities directly. She's never felt beautiful or desired, so having something special about her, especially something she was previously very self-conscious of, is exactly what Peggy wanted to hear. In the end, I actually think Peggy should feel that way about her big feet, but ultimately, she did feel used and taken advantage of, which is fair given the circumstances. So now let's explore a little Peggy Hill theory that's floated around the internet for a couple decades. In season 3's finale and season 4's premiere, Hank and Peggy go skydiving for their wedding anniversary. Neither Peggy's parachute or backup chute deploy, and Peggy plunges to the ground from an airplane, ending season 3 on a major cliffhanger. In the season 4 premiere, we find out that she did in fact survive the fall by falling into a very squishy, muddy field, but she breaks just about every bone in her body. The theory regarding this event is that after the fall, Peggy starts to portray even bigger and more bombastic narcissistic tendencies.
I fell 8,000 feet and survived! Woo-hoo-hoo!
And honestly, I think there's a case here. I'm not sure if in-universe this would be attributed to physical trauma from the fall or perhaps emotional trauma from her life almost ending, but it does seem like over the course of seasons 4, 5, and some of 6, Peggy Hill is more self-centered than ever.
You have probably all heard about the suspension of popular shop teacher Mr. Hill and his disqualification for substitute teacher of the year.
One of the absolute most ridiculous examples of Peggy's narcissism is, well, everything about the episode Peggy's Fanfare, which starts with Peggy receiving a form letter from Randy Travis's lawyer about a song that she sent him. Hank and basically everyone else recognize that this was a formal process, but Peggy thinks that it's a supportive push for her to continue to pursue songwriting. Peggy's behavior is borderline insane in this episode.
Where we will get to meet our favorite country music stars, including my friend, Randy Travis.
She basically completely takes over a church trip to a fair where Randy Travis is performing.
Yes, but you did not get a letter from Randy Travis, and I did.
We learn that she calls spaghetti and meatballs, well...
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Did she say Spapeggy?
And once she meets Randy Travis, she accuses him of stealing her song.
What the?
You stole my song!
Oh yeah, and punches him in the face. Now, Peggy was always a little self-centered, but the behavior in this episode is next level ridiculous. After Peggy assaults Randy Travis, she plans some revenge with Dale, which is never a good combination. When Peggy and Dale conspire, bad things happen. They TP Travis's trailer and accidentally push it into a pond without realizing that Randy Travis was inside the trailer. Now, admittedly, based on Randy Travis's behavior in the episode, he in all likelihood did steal Peggy's song, so her anger is totally warranted. That being said, a lot of her ridiculous actions came before she learned this, and even the ones after are pretty over the top. I mean, this episode had Hank contemplating the idea that Peggy might be willing to kill Randy Travis. That is a lot. Another of the most infamous examples is, of course, season 6's Lupe's Revenge. In this episode, Peggy demands to take over a class field trip to Mexico when their regular teacher is out sick. She, of course, believes she's fluent in Spanish, which is absolutely not true, but even goes so far as to throw away a Spanish-English dictionary that Bobby tries to bring with him.
Your mother is a Spanish dictionary.
Her Spanish incompetence leads them to a Mexican butcher rather than their planned destination, and overall, this actually doesn't go horribly. They have a nice time and then head back to Texas. The problem comes on the way back, when she accidentally shepherds a young Mexican girl onto the bus with the rest of the class.
Yo vivo en México.
Yes, long live Mexico. Now, where are your parents?
She then hides her at home and tries to figure out how to get her back to Mexico.
Peggy, there's a little Mexican girl in the utility closet.
To her credit, Peggy does successfully smuggle the girl back to Mexico, but is immediately arrested and tried for her crime. The very funny but depressing way she gets out of this is taking the stand and talking to the court in Spanish, which makes it abundantly clear that she cannot speak Spanish.
Su pudor. Yo poder ver que usted ser caballo razonable.
Now, I think what makes these two episodes kind of a bummer is the fact that Peggy doesn't get any sort of win in the end.
No es culpable.
Oh, God! I'm going to jail!
He said you're not guilty.
Oftentimes Peggy overcomes her own mistakes, but in these, she sort of just fumbles her way out of trouble without any sort of positive ending for her as a character. But after Lupe's Revenge, it seems like the writers reeled her back in and gave Peggy a little bit more competence. One of my favorite Peggy episodes is season 6's The Substitute Spanish Prisoner, in which Peggy buys into a scam that convinces her she's a genius. Also, killer guest performance from Jeff Goldblum in this one.
It's such a pleasure and an honor and a little intimidating, I must say, to be standing here before you.
This episode once again showcases the classic Peggy Hill pattern. Peggy feels insecure about her intelligence, takes an online IQ test that says she's a genius, and is then offered a membership in an exclusive Geniuses Club that validates her self-confidence. While there, she's swindled into spending $1,000 on an online PhD program, which obviously isn't real. But what I love about this episode is that it plays off of this Peggy Hill pattern and shows that even she recognizes it sometimes. She formulates a con to try and win back their money from the man who scammed them. We'll just keep calling him Jeff Goldblum. Normally, this would be an example of Peggy doubling down, which often leads to bigger failure. She and everyone who is scammed go in on the con with another $1,000 each, and at first, the episode plays out like we would expect it to. Jeff Goldblum sees through the fake horse racing con, bails before he loses all of the money, and makes off with even more of everyone's money. But the genius of this episode is that Peggy actually anticipated this, and anticipated that Hank would try to come to her rescue. She installed a fake room safe in Goldblum's room, where he stashes the money when Hank comes after him, and then they steal the safe through the wall of the hotel. Peggy even had a backup plan to steal Goldblum's car with a fake valet.
Oh, you were gonna steal his car. That would have been a felony.
So this episode represents everything I love about Peggy Hill on this show. We get to experience that typical pattern where she's duped into doing something very foolish, and we also get to see her resiliently crawl out of the hole she dug for herself and come out on top. And throughout the rest of the series, Peggy's competence shines through more often than not. In Beer and Loathing, Peggy starts working for Alamo Beer and learns that some of the beer they shipped down to Mexico was contaminated and was making the consumers very sick. Peggy switches out the company owner's beers with some from Mexico, making him sick and forcing him to admit they shipped contaminated beer. In Arlen City Bomber, Peggy rallies her fellow roller derby girls to buy their team out from under their shady owner. In Glen Peggy Glen Ross, she secures herself a job with Sizemore Realty, even after initially being fired. In Peggy's Gone to Pots, Peggy gets herself out of a multi-level marketing scheme that she was swindled into taking over by faking her own death and helping the representative above her get out of it as well. Ultimately, this is why I think Peggy is such a great character. Despite her obvious shortcomings and ridiculous tendencies to dig her own grave, she's resilient and resourceful enough to dig her own way out. Even though her stubborn overconfidence and drive to silence the naysayers gets her into a ton of trouble, I think it's an admirable quality. In the end, while we can all cringe at a lot of the decisions that Peggy makes, we also have to acknowledge that she's a strong and capable woman who has had to overcome a lot in her life. And through it all, she's maintained a loving home and family. She's excelled at multiple jobs, including as Substitute Teacher of the Year, and hell, she even wrote a hit song that was stolen by Randy Travis. Honestly, I think Peggy Hill herself said it best.
That makes the score Peggy Hill 1. 1, and people who doubt Peggy Hill, 0.
And that's where I want to pass it off to you. Give me your thoughts on Peggy Hill. Do you love her? Hate her? Respect her? None of the above? Comment below with how she makes you feel. If you like this video, let me know. I really like talking about King of the Hill and would love to make more videos if you want them. As always, do the commenting and liking business and stay tuned for more. Peace.
Johnny to Cellos.